How do you want to proceed now?
Well, at least 20 minutes of questions.
Okay.
What a fabulous ending. So let's see, the
Yeah.
mic is...
I think I'll sit down over here.
Yes, please. And we can...
My 90-year-old back prefers to be sitting rather than standing. I love that.
So the first question here, and then the second over there. Thanks, Maggie. And then third behind you, and then fourth right there. And then John Kim, number 5. Okay, sorry. Okay, maybe I should do... Okay, we'll start with there.
All right, thanks very much.
You may need to help me with the question. I also have 90-year-old years.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Secretary Perry. As I said to Professor Cummings this morning, I strongly agree with your proposal that the U.S. and China must truly work together. But I would add that to make the North really believe what Tillerson said, that there will be no regime change, no invasion, I think Russia has to be part of it, not necessarily six-party, but that Russia, China, and the United States together making that declaration on behalf of the United States, I think would increase greatly the chance that the North would accept this. And the fact that Trump is, in fact, insisting on being friendly with Russia, I think is a big step in that direction. What do you think?
I agree.
Great. Okay.
Do you have more to say?
I strongly agree.
Excellent. Maggie, I think it goes to Henri right there. The next
I will
slide.
say just a little more. I think China is a crucial element. Once we have China, then I think we have to include Russia as well. Excluding Russia would be a problem in and of itself. There'd be no reason to exclude China, and they can bring something positive to the picture along the line of security assurances.
Okay. Hello, my name is Henry Farron. I'm at the Columbia Law School Center for Korean Legal Studies. Thank you very much for your talk,
I
Secretary
can't see you.
Perry.
Where are you?
You may have to stand up, Henri.
So, as you said, right now the urgency comes from North Korea being able to develop its nuclear and missile arsenal without really any restrictions right now. And so the urgency would be to get a freeze. And as you pointed out, maybe just at least as a first step to go towards a freeze would be quite urgent. So my understanding is that the Chinese proposal for solving the Korean nuclear crisis is that you would have suspension for suspension, that is a freeze of the North Korean nuclear program, and a freeze of the military exercises that the North Koreans are so worried about. I haven't heard the U.S. Going in on that proposal, so my assumption is that to the U.S. the maintenance of common military exercises with South Korea is worth more than the continuation, than stopping the continuation of North Korea's nuclear program. I just wanted to know your thoughts about why is it so important?
Say that assumption again. About South Korea.
So, is it so that to the U.S. the continuation of U.S. ROK military exercises is worth more than the opportunity to freeze them immediately? Because that's the proposal that's on the table, and that's what actually North Korea has been proposing for a long time as well.
Good question.
I'm questioning the assumption, namely that if we stopped testing, if we stopped the exercises, they would stop testing. Is that the assumption?
That's the proposal for North Korea and China.
Whose proposal?
Well, first North Korea in 2015, and now China has put that on the table.
Well, North Korea has years and year after year said we should stop the exercise. I understand that. But I hadn't understood there's a concrete proposal that they would stop nuclear and missile testing if we did that. Are you confident that's right?
Yeah.
From China.
Well, and also North Korea in 2015.
Yeah.
So he's asking, the assumption is that because the US has not agreed to that proposal, that they are, they believe that the US RK exercises are more important than actually freezing North Korea's
Yeah.
nuclear and missile tests.
Yes. I think that probably the reason for not agreeing with it is more complicated than that. But if it were as simple and straightforward as that, we stop exercising, they stop testing nuclear weapons and missiles, then I think the answer should be yes, but we can only make that answer in conjunction with the South Korean government. The exercises are, after all, joint exercises. I would believe that the present South Korean government would accept that. And so I would think, yes, that would be a reasonable. So the answer is yes, I think that would be a reasonable basis, given that South Korea agreed.
Great, so there was a third question, and then the gentleman in the back. I appreciate your
Dan Lieberman. The Asian nations seem to accept hierarchical systems as long as the authority sort of operates for the benefit of the nation. Do you think the Kim family sort of wants to represent itself as that father figure to unite the nation, or is it for personal reasons, for their own benefit? The second question, I think you've given a very logical, knowledgeable presentation that can lead to the solution. Do you know why some of the irrational opinions of our own government have presented the solution and have followed your own ideas?
I don't understand the question.
I don't either. Do you mind, the first question was about the
Asian nations seem to accept hierarchical systems in which there's an authoritarian system in control, and they accept it as long as the authoritarian system benefits the people. Do you think the Kim family wants to just stay in power sort of as a father figure to unite the country, or are they doing it just for personal aggrandizement?
I don't understand enough about their system or what's in their mind to answer that question with any authority. The Kim family represents more than a hierarchical authority in North Korea, as I understand it. They represent a divinity and represent themselves as being divine, almost. So it's more complicated than just hierarchical. And to the extent they believe that, or they think it's important for people to believe that, I would imagine it's going to be a hard time them agreeing to give up that belief. I have seen written testimony from North Koreans defecting who talk about that divinity, and they believe it, even ones who have defected. So I think that's a much deeper than just a hierarchical issue here.
Okay, the gentleman in the back.
John Burton with the Korea Times. Secretary Perry, what would your response be to critics of a freeze who would say that would undermine the global NPT regime?
What are they saying again? They would what?
Okay. What is your response to critics who would say that the freeze would undermine the global NPT regime?
I would disagree. I don't know why they would think that. It does not bring North Korea into compliance with the MTP for sure. It's a useful step in that direction, I think. I would hope to take that final step in time. And I would, to people who were making that point, I would argue this is an important step. We're not going to get there all at once. So let's do this as a step toward, maybe we'll get the later step. We have no assurance we'll get to that later step, but at least there's a hope in getting to the later step.
Great, John Kim? And then I have to come back, and then I'll come back to this.
Hi, my name is John Kim. I'm from Veterans for Peace, a national organization of veterans working for peace. And I hope that you can join us too, since you are the veteran of U.S. Army. My question is first of all, what were you doing during the Korean War period? And secondly, what is your assessment of the new so-called policy toward North Korea under the Trump administration? It's called the maximum pressure and engagement policy toward North Korea. Doesn't that sound a little contradictory? I mean, if you put too much pressure, there's going to be more danger of the rising military tensions in Korea. So, how do you assess the current policy of the Trump administration? Thank
The
you.
second question is easier to answer. We've had 16 years of putting pressure on North Korea, and the result has been they built a nuclear arsenal and long-range missiles. So just judged by results, I would say that policy has proven to be a feckless policy. On the first question, what was I doing in the Korean War? I was going to the mailbox every day looking for orders to be called up. I was in the U.S. Army Reserves. Specifically, I got my master's degree from Stanford in June 15th of 1950. And it was just 2 weeks later the North Korean invaded. All reserves were being called up, and I was fully expecting to be one of them. But for a reason I've never understood, I was not called up. I'd been in the Army of Occupation of Japan earlier as an enlisted man. And I went to ROTC to get my commission at Stanford. But for some reason, my number was never called up.
Okay, sorry. 1 and 2, and then over here, number 3. No.
Maybe we push the microphone up a little
Okay.
closer to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Right here. Thank you, Secretary. My name is Dong Hui Yu with China Review News Agency of Hong Kong. And today we are talking about avoiding war in Korea Peninsula. But in East Asia, we have another flashpoint that is Taiwan Strait. And I know you just came back from China and Taiwan a couple months ago. And do you think the linkage between the North Korea issue and the Taiwan issue is a good idea? Because somebody suggests that maybe the United States could restrain on the Taiwan issue in exchange of China's more cooperation on North Korea. And do you think it's a good idea? And secondly, do you believe the US and China could avoid a war in Taiwan Strait? Or the United States is more willing to fight for Taiwan or send a aircraft carrier to Taiwan Strait like you did in 1996? Thank you very much. 2 questions. Thanks.
Hope you remember those.
I was in China 2 months ago launching my book, My Journey to Nuclear Brinkley, a Chinese translation of it had just come out. And so I went over, as authors do, to launch the book there. Very nice set of meetings. Everywhere I went in China, I was reminded that I was the guy that sent the 2 carrier battle groups to Taiwan Strait. Which is okay with me. I like them to remember that. Everywhere I went in Taiwan, and then I went to Taiwan to sign the contract for them to make a Taiwanese edition of the book. You may not know it, but although China is a language, that the script in Taiwan is different from the script in China. So the Taiwanese wanted their own publication, and so I signed the contract while I was over there. Certainly everywhere I went in Taiwan, the first thing they said, "You're the one that sent the carrier battle groups, thank you, thank you, thank you." I would do it again if I had to do it. But I also understood that there were downsides to doing it. The upside was is it resolved that crisis quickly without bloodshed. And it made clear to China that military threats to Taiwan were not acceptable. But it also gave the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, a wonderful excuse for building up their forces, particularly the naval forces, and particularly the anti-naval forces, which they've been doing ever since. So anytime you have a really good idea of something you want to do, and you say this, just remember that's chapter 1. What's chapter 2 look like? What's chapter 3 look like? Chapter 1 was a great success. It's accomplished the mission we wanted to accomplish with no loss of life. But chapter 2, in this case, was the accelerated build-up of the People's Liberation Army, which was not a good idea for us, which continues to this day. That was the first question. There was another question?
The linkage between North Korea and Taiwan issue.
No, I think it's a bad mistake to link North Korea and Taiwan. Even talking about it, suggesting it, weakens our position with Taiwan, making them think that they're a pawn which could be offered in a negotiation. A bad idea. I don't believe we're doing that.
Hi, Dr. Perry. One quick comment and then one question. So first, in response to Henri and the question about the suspension, one of the reasons why the government rejected that request was because it's simply an unfair and inappropriate exchange. Because on one hand, North Korea, it's illegal. It's under international law. They're violating the U.S. Security Council resolutions by conducting nuclear tests or ballistic missile tests, whereas a military exercise is defensive and routine training exercise that most countries do, including North Korea. So that's one of the reasons. That's just an unfair, inappropriate exchange. The question I have for Dr. Perry is a follow-up to the Korea Times question, which is, I absolutely agree with your position, but how would you respond to criticism that simply a freeze would give justification to countries like South Korea or Japan or even Iran to develop their own nuclear program?
They have that justification anyway. It's not really a justification. It might be a rationalization. It might be something they say in public. But the forces driving Iran or South Korea to nuclear weapons are much more fundamental, I think, than that. And the forces holding them back are much more fundamental than that. So I would not take that as a serious argument.
Great, we had 2 questions over here.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Kuleva, a student at the University of Southern California. You previously mentioned that during the 6-party talks, the U.S. didn't have a diplomatic strategy, and I was wondering what would you have recommended that the U.S. have as a strategy, and could such a strategy be applied again in the future?
I think fundamental when you're negotiating with another country, fundamental to your strategy is to understand where they're coming from, what they want. A diplomat is well known for his silver voice and his adeptness at turning phrases. A really good diplomat doesn't work with his mouth as much as he works with his ears. He listens to what other people say, what they want. When he understands what they want, then he's in a better position to craft the position that he comes with. So part of our problem in the past is we've never been listening to North Korea. We've never been considering what it is they want, what they're trying to achieve. And to the extent we believed what they're looking for primarily, and willing to give up other things for that, is regime survivability, sustaining the Kim dynasty. If we understood that, I think we would take a different approach. So we were in the position for years of offering economic incentives, which they would like to have, but which were secondary to their primary goals, and giving them nothing which led them to believe that it could sustain their dynasty. They were seeing, as I said, Stalin and his dynasties falling all around them. There wasn't an academic concern on their part. Now, please do not misconstrue what I'm saying I appreciate or support the Kim dynasty. I would love to see the Kim dynasty fail. And when the Bush administration had that as an objective, I would have supported it if I thought they had a way of achieving it. They didn't have a way of achieving it, so it was a policy without a plan. So understanding that that's what they want to achieve, number one, and understanding that we don't have any way that we're willing to accept, willing to do, of overthrowing the regime, then we got to tailor our diplomacy to that objective, and we never have. We have had feckless diplomacy, both in the Bush administration and the Clinton administration.
The Obama
Pardon me, the Obama administration. The Clinton administration thought that they put enough pressure on them, the regime would collapse. I would have supported that if it worked, if they had a way of making it work. It didn't. And that, not only that, there was no reason to expect it to succeed. It was a thoughtless policy. The Obama administration had what was called strategic patience. What does strategic patience mean? It means if we wait long enough, the regime's going to collapse. Again, a great policy if it would work. They had no way of making it work, and they were doing nothing to make it work. So it was a feckless policy again. You notice I'm being bipartisan in my criticism of the administration.
Great, we had one more question over there and then back over here. And you know what? We're almost out of time, so. Two more questions? Okay, thanks, Deborah. She's my boss. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Michaela Harris. I'm also a student at the University of Southern California. And I was wondering if at this time North Korea would be open to extending an invitation back to the IAEA into their country, and if the United States can accomplish this through open dialogue or help other proliferation efforts or non-proliferation efforts.
I don't understand the question. It was about the IAEA. What about it?
So North Korea, I think it was back in 2010 or maybe 2009, like disinvited the IAEA, and so I was wondering if at this time they would be willing to let them back into the country to do other like moderating.
Well, first of all, they cannot become an IAEA member again as long as they have nuclear weapons. They're not authorized to have nuclear weapons. So we're a long way away from getting it back into the IAEA. They have to, first of all, dismantle all the nuclear weapons, which we don't have a plan for seeing happen right now. Secondly, they could. I don't see any reason why they couldn't have the IAEA in as inspectors. That's really the question you're asking, wasn't it? We had IAEA inspectors in there back in 1994. And if we had any agreement where they were agreeing to stop certain things with the nuclear program, you'd need some means of inspection, and the IAEA would be a wonderful tool of inspection. What I proposed was something simpler than that, a free-zone testing. You would not need to have the IAEA to verify free-zone testing. We can validate testing and non-testing with independent means. We have seismographs all over the world that detected even the very low yield bursts which North Korea had in the first two bursts. One of them, I think, was only about a kiloton. It was really maybe even a fraction of a kiloton. It was a very low yield, but we detected it immediately. So we can verify both an agreement not to test nuclear weapons and an agreement not to test long-range missiles. We have perfectly good national technical means for doing that. It would be a good idea to get the IAEA back, not only at Yongbyon, which is where their plutonium and some of the enrichment shows up, but they must have also another highly enriched uranium facility somewhere in the country. Get them in that facility as well. It would be good to have that, but nothing in this freeze agreement would require that, as I see it.
Over here.
Thank you. I'm Elizabeth Cohen, and I'm now a researcher at the Smithsonian. But
excuse me. I should answer that. A freeze could conceivably also involve a freeze on building more fissile material. If it did that, then it would be necessary to have an on-site and verification of all of that, and the IAEA would be an entirely appropriate facility for doing that.
Yes, I'm Elizabeth Cohen, and I'm now a research fellow at the Smithsonian, but I spent 5 years in South Korea as a professor and researcher there, and I thought your talk was wonderful, and I really agreed with a lot of it. But I had one comment regarding the Russian suggestion. I had the opportunity to travel in Russia a few years ago, and what I learned that I was very surprised about, that I haven't seen publicized, is that there's Russia and North Korea apparently are allies and do quite a bit of trade together, and I've never heard that publicized, but that's it seems like that's important.
What do we do together?
Pardon?
I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I said that Russia and North Korea are allies.
Oh,
So,
I can't assert that that's true today, that they're allies in the sense they have a non-aggressive, they have an agreement where one would go to the aid of the other in case of an attack. I don't believe that's true, but I may be incorrect.
well, that's what I learned by talking to people
They
in
are
Russia.
partners in some sense, but I don't think they're allies.
Right, they might not be formal allies,
Yeah.
but they do have at least an informal relationship where they do trade together.
Yeah.
That
a
may
lot of
very well be
investments
true, yeah.
together. Yes. Okay, great.
Thank you so much, Secretary Perry. I am Kathy Crandall Robinson. I'm with Women in International Security. And as the new South Korean president comes to visit our new president, I'm wondering if there are specific things that we should be watching for and pushing for. And one specific question I had was about the THAAD missile defense that we've been trying to really push on South Korea. And how do you think that is affecting things? And is there a possibility for change in that policy?
My problem here is giving you a short answer to that question. I have long and deeply held views about ballistic missile defense systems in general. But I'll try to summarize. First of all, the only reason the United States should have for supplying a THAAD to South Korea is if the South Korean government requests it and wants it. We have no independent reason for wanting to put a THAAD system in South Korea. The previous government was acceptable, at least acceptable, maybe even asking for that. The present government is very ambiguous about whether they want it or don't want it, and may decide they don't want it. If they decide they don't want it, we should gracefully take it back home. That's comment one. Comment two is it would maybe give the South Koreans a good feeling to think they're being defended by THAAD. But objectively, the THAAD has no real ability to provide an effective defense against an attack from Korean missiles. It has had some problems in testing, but even if it operates exactly as advertised, it has little or no capabilities against an attack that includes decoys. The simplest possible decoys. I have no idea what North Korea has in the way of decoys, but I'm completely confident they could easily and readily build decoys, which would give the THAAD system a very bad time. So if a South Korean citizen or government official asked me, will the THAAD system defend us against a North Korean attack, I would have to say no. Perhaps hedge a little bit, not likely.
I think we have to wrap it up. So will you please join me in thanking Secretary Perry?